I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell politicians to give up the rooms. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth.
God, it's me. Can you hear my plea? Feeling like I'm lost in this world, can't you see? Demons creeping in, trying to take control of me. But I'm just trying to find the light, trying to break free. I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. But why do you keep forgetting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feeling like I'm on a leash. Can't find no peace, can't find no peace. Living in hell, can't you hear my plea? I'm suffocating, can't you see? Why you let these false prophets roam free? While the real ones suffer, can't you see? I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Why you keep targeting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feel like I'm on a leash, can't find no peace.
Hardest battles, strongest soldiers, greatest burden, broadest shoulders. Pushing up just like these boulders. This conflict like it's water, still this mercy. Take my chalice, seeking grace through all this malice. All these salty motherfuckers could give up.
Politics and sinners, they all the same.
Got me stuck in this endless game. But I won't give up,
won't play the role.
Gotta do what's best
for my soul.
I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell these politicians to give up the room. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth. Living wild but truthfully free. God keep on watching over me. Take my pleas and keep the receipts. I just want all of humanity to be free. And clean the seas and stop the greed.
Good morning, 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 good morning. And this morning I'm bringing you smoke and mirrors, power plays, crime cover-ups, and the rise in plane crashes. But before we get into all of that, I want to play independent music. And from a state that's right next to where I'm at, here goes Secrets by Micah.
I just don't know how to say no to you. Wonder where you been, like where I go from you. I've been out here keeping all your secrets, while you just cover problems up in sequence. I just don't know how to say no to you. Taking off your clothes on the phone for me. We've been getting lost up in them secrets. Come on, tell me, baby, do you need it? Yeah. You act so artificial. All the things that I do, like what's it to you? Go make your mind up. Better take your time, don't fake that wind up. Don't leave me reading in between the lines. I go trip over myself, cause all them words got me screaming. Yeah. Now you're saying that I lost it. Guess that full moon got us both too exhausted to see that whole truth. Now she says she wanna fly away to Colorado, so we hopping on a plane like there's no tomorrow. Kiss the logic is a blame, ain't no Aristotle. They can say what they say, I just don't know how to say no to you. Wonder where you been, like where I go from you. Cause I've been out here keeping all your secrets, while you just cover problems up in sequence. Yeah, I just don't know how to say no to you. Taking off your clothes all on the phone for me. We've been getting lost up in them secrets. Come on, tell me, baby, do you need that? Cause I'm lost up in your pleasure. This is hard to measure. You know it's something missing, but sex never been better. Sex never been better. Yeah, I'm down for an adventure, but you've been calling all my friends. Maybe you just wanted this to end, but I can't even go pretend that you are the one for me. I just don't know how to say no to you. Wonder where you been, like where I go from you. I've been out here keeping all your secrets, But you just cover problems up in sequence. Yeah, I just don't know how to say no to you. Taking off your clothes all on the phone for me. Leaving, getting lost in little secrets. Come on, tell me, baby, do you need this? Whoa, whoa.
Hey, that was Micah Secrets. Micah Emmerich Secrets. Man, and you know what's crazy is that that song fits so perfect for today because it's like the whole world right now we feel like is everything to better marginalized communities, communities that are silenced, that really have no say in the world. Are there's so many secrets out here. You know, there's secrets in the churches, there's secrets in nonprofits, and this last year was the year of the truth. This year's the year of retribution. 2025 is the year of retribution. So, man, I got a hell of a show today for y'all. I want to get into, excuse me, how the Supreme Court, how a case in history, right? Because a lot of people don't know about history. So there was a case that redefined who we are, right? That a lot of people don't want to talk about. You know, we talk about all these, oh, we feel bad, but is it emotions or is it the truth? Is it the way the world is set up, the way that America was designed? And I want people to really get out of their feelings and be more educated about it. You know what I'm saying? Of like, don't be getting mad because that's the first thing that they can use against us is that we're individuals that are mad. It's passion that gets looked at as anger, as that we're threatening. But honestly, we just want to know the truth. So this is how a Supreme Court case redefined whiteness.
High caste Hindu of full Indian blood, born in Punjab, India, a white person? This question was asked before the US Supreme Court in 1923. The plaintiff, Bhagat Singh Thind, was an educated English-speaking Indian immigrant and US Army veteran who had already tried to naturalize twice as a US citizen by arguing that he was white. And that's because at the time, Congress limited naturalization to free white people and those of African ancestry and nativity. So what does this little known but consequential court case tell us about the larger story of white supremacy and citizenship in America? On July 4th, 1913, 20-year-old Bhagat Singh Thind arrived aboard the SS Minnesota to Seattle, Washington. Over 14.5 million immigrants came to the U.S. between 1900 and 1920. Thind was one of 8,000 South Asians who had emigrated to the United States during this period of mass immigration. At the time of Thind's arrival, the US had a population of over 92 million people, so South Asians on the whole made up a tiny fraction of the population. The few Indians who came were primarily from the Punjab region, which at the time was ruled by the British. Most came from rural farming villages and small towns in India, and in the US were consigned to back-breaking work for very little pay. South Asians arrived at a time of rampant anti-Asian hysteria, and Indians quickly became the next iteration of a perceived Asiatic invasion. A 1911 US Immigration Commission even called Indians the least desirable race of immigrants admitted thus far. 6 years later, in 1917, all Indian and most Asian immigration was banned through the creation of a barred Asiatic zone.
Asian immigrants are extremely diverse. They come from many, many different countries throughout Asia. They have different histories, different cultures, different religions, different ethnicities. However, once in the United States, they were more often than not lumped together as Orientals or as an Asiatic invasion. And what this does in the American mind is that it sets South Asians into this already existing framework of Asian immigrants being economic competition, Asian immigrants being unassimilable aliens, Asian immigrants being a threatening horde.
Citizenship was and still is a necessary pathway to social and economic opportunity. Without citizenship, many states barred Asian immigrants from voting, becoming doctors, lawyers, or government workers. They were restricted from owning land and could not protect themselves from deportation. The only way for immigrant men like Tind to become U.S. citizens was to naturalize, which is the process of voluntarily becoming a U.S. citizen, as opposed to being born one. The first federal law on naturalization was the Federal Naturalization Act of 1790, which limited citizenship to free white people. After the Civil War, the Naturalization Act was amended to include aliens of African nativity and persons of African descent, granting citizenship to millions of Black people previously enslaved and living without citizenship rights, although citizenship did not confer equal rights. At the time, there was no comprehensive legal definition of whiteness, but there was legal precedent. Most European immigrants who arrived during the 19th and early 20th century were able to naturalize, and their whiteness was rarely contested by the courts, though we know they suffered periods of acute discrimination. Meanwhile, it was very difficult for immigrants from across Asia to naturalize. This included not only Indian immigrants, but also Syrians, Afghans, and Armenians, who nevertheless still applied for and sometimes won citizenship. How? Well, not all judges agreed on what made someone white or white enough, but appearances mattered. According to legal historian Harvey Dillon, embracing Western dress, hairstyles, and English in U.S. courts fostered a sense of visual whiteness and upper class.
So as long as you looked the part, you could act like the part. You were treated like that, and that's, I want to show people of, like, over time it has evolved. You know, they had, you know, people get in their feelings about the 14th Amendment and about deportations, you know, and it is hard for me too. You know, I see people get on social media, and, you know, a lot of it, I feel like it is for fame, for clout, for their little 15 minutes of success. And we fall for that because it's sensationalist. It's drama. It's things that catch us in, you know, it's things that we're interested in. So we'll waste our little time, but things like learning about history so we understand where we're going, so we don't make the same mistakes as our ancestors. Because everybody, this, the whole crazy thing of it is, right? And this is why I feel like they got rid of Martin Luther King, right? And why, you know, Fred Hampton, and why there was so many other things that, you know, 1970, we had, there was a lot of racial shit, you know, especially in Chicago area, you know, especially around the presidential elections. And in my eyes, I feel like when Martin was talking about economic justice, because you have to fix that, the wealth gap, especially is when you see a white family of four is almost $90,000 to $80,000 more than an African American family of four. And when it comes to wealth gap, we have a serious issue. We have a problem that we need to fix, because here's the thing. We're seeing that this is the one thing that I can't get mad about when it comes to Trump, right? And I see him doing USAID. I see him he's about to do the Department of Education, you know, and all these GBIs. But then you see all these scams. You see that there was really no oversight. And it's honestly both sides of it, because these things aren't written in policies. They're not written in legislation, but we got to make sure they are. We, the people, have to make sure that they're written in there, right? So I want people to see that way before our time, that there was laws and policies and ordinances that were written up, voted on, and implemented in our communities that honestly, some of them are still there. And we need to look into it. That's why I keep on doing the redlining. I want to engrave it in people's brains, that we're nowhere near equal. It doesn't matter if you're boycotting Target. It doesn't matter if you're boycotting the Super Bowl. If you're protesting City Hall, what changes? That's what I really want to ask people. What changes? Because if you're not a part of making change, and here's the thing of it is, I've tried that route. I don't want, oh, what do you do? What do you mean, what do I do? I've had people that were liberals, white liberals, steer me in the wrong direction. You know, it's just like when I did my resolution, or I had people that looked like me, but weren't all skin folk and kin folk. You know, when it came to my proclamation, that racism a public health crisis, you know, and still to this day, they don't want to do right because I've asked it to be vetoed. I've asked it to be directed, and especially what we want to go after, and that's systemic racism. Because it's not the individuals. It's not individuals it's the policies that allow these individuals to do what they do. And that's the problem. They don't want to solve the problem. That's how I figured out this DEI and all this bullshit. It ain't nothing. That's why when these people talk about, you know, oh, it's Black History Month and we're going to boycott Target, I don't give a fuck. Because here's the thing of it is, when communities really needed niggas, y'all were silent. When we were being fucked in the ass with no Vaseline, y'all niggas were quiet. Because you know what? That's the whole thing of it is, y'all are okay with that because y'all was already doing that shit in your own little circles. Y'all were fucking your best friends in the booties. Y'all were eating each other's kitty cats, or you sticking wine bottles up there. So at the end of the day, it didn't matter. So you're okay with this. Really, a lot of y'all needed therapy and therapists to be able to, because a lot of these motherfuckers out here have daddy issues. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it. That's why they put these Black women up here. I don't give a fuck. I will call you a bitch too, just like your nigga. So it don't even matter. I don't care, because here's the thing of it is, you know right between wrong. And if you don't want to put the draw that line between the right and wrong, I will. Because I'm tired of this. And that's the whole thing of it is, I really want to, before I ramble on anymore, I want to get into this, you know, how the Supreme Court case redefined whiteness.
Decorum that was required of those proximate to whiteness to naturalize as U.S. citizens. In 1917, the same year Indians were barred from immigrating, Tin submitted his declaration of intention to naturalize to a county clerk in Oregon State and wrote in his color as white. Tin hoped to join the very small group of mostly well-to-do Indian immigrants who had successfully naturalized in lower courts. While he waited for his application to be approved, Tin enlisted in the U.S. Army. Despite rampant xenophobia, the military actively recruited immigrants and non-citizens to serve. And so Tin received his first certificate of U.S. citizenship while stationed at Camp Lewis in Washington State. But just 4 days later, the federal government revoked his citizenship. In 1919, Tin applied for citizenship a second time, but a federal agent from the Bureau of Naturalization tried to convince the court that Tin could not naturalize. However, the district judge acknowledged Tin's military service and his genuine affection for the Constitution, laws, and customs and privileges of this country. He also referred to a line of cases that proved Indians were white. And so, on November 18, 1920, Tin was granted citizenship a second time. But this ruling would not stand. The Department of Justice had been tracking Tin's applications from the beginning. The government wanted to prove once and for all that Indians were not white and planned to use Tin as their test case. So the Department of Justice appealed the ruling, and the case eventually made its way to the U.S. Supreme Court. On January 11, 1923, the Supreme Court began hearing arguments in the United States versus Bhagat Singh Tin. This would be Tin's final chance to become a citizen by proving that he was white. The Supreme Court explicitly framed the case as a test of the Naturalization Act and its intended meaning of whiteness. To prove Tin's whiteness, his lawyers built on previous naturalization cases, pulling together arguments that had convinced lower courts that Indians were white people. First, they argued that as a high caste Indian, Tin was racially pure because high caste families did not intermarry with other communities. Further, his lawyers argued that because of this supposed racial purity, Tin shared a common Aryan ancestry with Europeans. And as an Aryan, Tin was Caucasian and therefore white. The now debunked notion of a common ancestry due to a supposed Aryan invasion would later be used by the Nazis, but that is a whole other video. The Supreme Court unanimously rejected all of Tin's arguments. Ironically, they rejected the scientific racism used by Tin's lawyers, but to equally racist ends. In the final ruling, Justice Sutherland noted that while a, quote, blonde Scandinavian and brown Hindu may have once had a common ancestor, the average man would see unmistakable and profound differences between them today. Tin just didn't look white enough to those 9 white men. According to the court, all Indians were definitively of Asiatic stock and therefore ineligible for U.S. citizenship. Period. The fallout from the trial was swift and devastating. Indians became the first group in the U.S. to have their citizenship revoked. Between 1923 and 1926, over 70 naturalized Indians were stripped of their citizenship. They found themselves in social, economic, and legal limbo along with their wives and children. This included the Bagai family. Vaishno Das Bagai emigrated with his family from Peshawar, part of modern-day Pakistan. In 1915, Bagai settled in San Francisco with his wife Gala and 3 young sons, Brij, Madan, and Ram. Bagai embraced his new life in America. He wore Western suits, spoke fluent English, and adopted Western mannerisms. He even opened a store, Bagai's Bazaar. But the Tin ruling unraveled the life of the Bagai family, who all lost their citizenship and then their livelihood. In 1928, Vaishno tried to visit his relatives in India but was denied a U.S. passport. This was the final straw for Vaishno, who took his own life in both grief and protest. Vaishno sent a letter to the San Francisco Examiner, which published wrenching excerpts. Quote, "Is life worth living in a gilded cage? Obstacles this way, blockades that way, and the bridges burnt behind." The Tin ruling emboldened the U.S. government to revoke citizenship from other immigrants, including Mexicans and Afghans. It also set the stage for the most comprehensive and restrictive immigration act to date, which passed Congress with overwhelming support in 1924. Tin finally received U.S. citizenship in 1935 through a law that permitted all veterans, regardless of race, to naturalize. He earned his PhD in theology and English literature at UC Berkeley and lectured on metaphysics. Tin passed away in 1967. During the last 2 decades of Tin's life, immigration and naturalization policies slowly changed. A series of federal laws beginning in 1946 opened immigration up to Indians once more, though these laws still maintain quotas that privilege certain countries over others. Even so, the decades that followed saw large-scale immigration from India and other Asian countries. As of 2020, over 5.5 million people identified as Indian or Pakistani in the US Census. That same year, the city of Berkeley, California named a street after Kala Bagai, Vaishno's widow, almost a century after her family had been driven out. After the tragedy of Vaishno's death, Kala persevered despite a very uncertain future. She remarried, put her 3 sons through college, and became a US citizen in 1946. She dedicated herself to building community for other South Asian immigrants, hosting functions for women who immigrated as restrictions loosened after 1965. By the time of Kala's death in 1983, she was affectionately known as Mother India. Race still animates our discussions around immigration. In fact, immigration persists as a top campaign issue. And our elections still feature explicitly racist rhetoric about immigrants. Legal scholar Amanda Frost estimates that over the last 2 centuries, millions of people have had their citizenship revoked. And denaturalization continues to this day. whether for small errors on applications or the actual wrongful deportation of American citizens, particularly those living near the Mexican border. As the daughter of South Asian immigrants, we constantly question what it means to be American. Balancing the desire to belong without losing one's cultural identity is a perpetual tightrope that all immigrants must navigate to this day. Bhagat Singh Thinn's case and Vaishnav Das Bagai serve as reminders of the struggles of not just South Asian immigrants, but all immigrants who exhibit courage and resilience in the face of incredible uncertainty to claim a piece of the American dream.
Now you see what I'm talking about, right? Now, that's what's crazy to me is like, how don't a lot of people see, like, because it all goes back before us. It goes back to policies, legislation. We have to read the fine print. We have to read the writing. We have to read what's in the message. And that is what's crazy, because a lot of people don't have time for that shit. And that's why the world looks like the way that it does. Now, I want to get into this power sharing agreement and this fraud and oversight committee that House has in here in Minnesota. But see, it has no subpoena power. And I want to show you something that happened. It's crazy because we have a fraud oversight with no subpoena power, right? But then you go to the Capitol and they have subpoena power. Now, what you're going to see is a Republican vote. It's an oversight committee that is blocking a subpoena to Elon Musk. Now, and then I'm going to show you what that means for Minnesota and their fraud and oversight committee with no subpoena power.
Billionaire House Democrats on the Oversight Committee furious with Elon Musk, attempting to subpoena him to testify about his cutting and slashing as he tries to reshape the federal government. Republican James Comer tried to move business along, but Democrats refused.
I move that the committee subpoena Elon Musk to come before it as a witness at the earliest possible moment.
The motion is not debatable, as many
Point of order, Mr.
are in
Chairman.
favor of tabling. Point of order, state your point.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's outrageous that this committee will not even entertain a motion.
No, you state your
Chairman, that's not a point of order.
Somebody
You know,
who's breaking the law and dismantling our federal agent level.
So after order was restored, members then voted on the motion, but it ultimately failed 19-20. Democrat Ro Khanna abstaining from voting. The California lawmaker speaking out now, though, saying he wasn't given enough notice and would have voted yes. Let's bring in our Jay O'Brien. He's on Capitol Hill. Jay, is this what we're going to see in Congress for the next 4 years? In not just this hearing, but are we is this a look into the future?
Well, to a degree, Kira, but also Democrats are trying to grapple with this new phenomenon of Elon Musk and how they're going to respond to it. You saw that Democratic effort of trying to subpoena him, which Democrats knew would be unsuccessful because Republicans control that committee. But it's just another element of things that they're trying to do to get some handle on what exactly Elon Musk is doing with his DOGE effort to the federal government, that very public effort to gut, if not entirely do away with USAID, the U.S. government aid agency for international aid. What sources tell us is a similar effort to take aim at the Department of Education. And also what sources tell us is a new effort to take aim at NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, and put that into potentially some other federal agency. All of it to say Democrats are trying to get a handle on A, what exactly Elon Musk is trying to do, and B, try to stop it in its tracks in a way that they don't really have the authority to, because they don't control the House or the Senate, and they certainly don't control the White House. So it's Democrats trying to grapple with this new phenomenon of Elon Musk and exactly what he wants to do with the federal government.
What exactly were Democrats hoping for from Musk's testimony? And now where do they go from here?
One of the questions I've repeatedly heard from Democrats is how much authority does Elon Musk have? Because Elon Musk has portrayed it as if he is the decider on some of these issues. He's tweeted and said that it's time for USAID, that agency I mentioned earlier, to quote unquote die, and he's also made similar statements about other agencies. So he's framing himself as a decider here. I put that question to Republican lawmakers today. How much authority does Elon Musk have, and who's in the driver's seat? Is it Elon Musk or President Trump? Here's what one told me. What is his level of authority like in this White House, in your understanding?
Elon is an advisor to the president, like a lot of people are. The president obviously takes credence in what Elon says, because he's not only one of the great minds in the history of our time, but he's also developed great companies. And if you compare his operations and any other corporate operations compared to the federal government, it's not even close.
He's acting like he has the authority to shut down entire agencies, though.
Like I said, he's an advisor to the president.
So that does make you wonder how much power, and this the thing of it is, right? Because I want people to see that, right? So we have a fraud and oversight committee here in Minnesota, right? But it all sounds like a big political shakeup, right? For the next 2 years, because Republicans have locked in a major win, a Republican speaker, and a 5-3 majority of Minnesota's first ever fraud agency oversight committee. It sounds like a victory, right? On paper, sure, but here's the catch. This committee comes with zero subpoena power. Zero subpoena power. And I want to break that down, right? So a fraud prevention committee without the ability to subpoena, that means they can talk, they can debate, they can even expose corruption, but they can't force anyone to testify, to turn over documents, or truly hold people accountable. So what are we really looking at here? A legitimate effort to clean up Minnesota, or just another smokescreen to keep conservatives quiet while the real fraud keeps rolling? And that's what I feel like it is. We all know it's an election season coming up. Maybe you guys don't, but and also, you know, you look at the newspapers, you hear about feeding our future. We have been no stranger to corruption. Millions of taxpayer dollars have disappeared in the thin air through shady government programs, and yet no one ever seems to face real consequences. If this committee is serious, it needs teeth. But right now, it looks more like a political play than a real solution. And the real question remains, will we seek truth and justice, or just another case of politicians talking a big game and doing nothing? This is my question to Walter Hudson. This is, and Dustin Grage, because Dustin he responded to me yesterday. This fraud committee doesn't mean shit if you can't force people, if it's voluntary, because we get called all kind of names now. And these people, they can voluntarily give this shit up. But unless you force them, they're not going to. That's the one crazy part for me. So what are you really getting done? You don't want to solve and look at corruption. That's what's crazy for me, is because you honestly don't want to look at corruption, because if you have no subpoena power, what power do you have? Because they're not going to come up to the state capitol and do the right thing, because they don't do the right. You have to make them do the right thing. So that's the one crazy part, which I don't understand, is how are you going to make these people do the right thing? So I want to get into a video, and it talks about judiciary and oversight subpoena power. And I want to explain this a little bit. It's only like a couple minutes long, but I think this video is very insightful, and it's very informative. So I want you guys to listen and be educated on this, right? And know what's happening in our state capitol. Understand what's going on with our representatives. So with that being said, I want to get into this. Subpoena power explained.
Technically, there is no provision in the Constitution that expressly gives Congress investigative powers. So where was that power formalized for Congress and House committees like the Judiciary and Oversight and Reform Committee? The Supreme Court. The highest court in the land has written that the power to investigate is fundamental to its constitutional role. In McGrain versus Doherty, the Supreme Court said the power of inquiry and the process to enforce it is an essential and appropriate auxiliary to the legislative function. basically, Congress can't do its legislative job without the power to investigate. In theory, and in practice, Congress can use any of its constitutional tools, like delaying confirmation hearings, stalling legislation, utilizing arcane arrest powers, to push investigations forward. But the power we're focusing on is Congress's Plan B, the subpoena, which is essentially a binding letter that forces the receiver to provide any requested documents and answer questions before the committee. Lawmakers usually try to exhaust all those aforementioned leverage points before issuing a subpoena, but if the administration still refuses to cough up the requested information, the chair will slap together, you guessed it, a subpoena. Each committee in Congress has different rules on the process behind subpoenas. In both the Judiciary and Oversight Committee, the chair is empowered to issue a subpoena, even though the Judiciary chair has to jump through a few more hoops in order to distribute that particular joy.
I hope this hasn't inconvenienced you too much.
Being subpoenaed? No, why would that inconvenience me?
Have a good day, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Drop dead.
The subpoena, or even the threat of a subpoena, is the most vital tool Congress has to ensure an administration is following lawful procedures, avoiding corruption, carrying out its ethical duties. Essentially, not acting like a bunch of unsupervised punks. Think of it like your mom, calling you up at midnight while you're out. If you don't answer, you're in big trouble. If you do answer, and you're up to no good, you're still gonna be in big trouble. But instead of stopping high school seniors from take your pick of anything high school seniors do,
it's time we're seniors, and we're gonna rule the school.
The subpoena threat ensures some of the most powerful people on Earth aren't abusing their high office. So how does this play off in real life? The Mueller report could be on its way. Attorney General William Barr has not committed to releasing the full report, in which case Congress may use that subpoena power to get their hands on the full report.
That's what I'm saying. We got to make these people do the right thing, because a lot of people don't want to do it willingly. So if they don't have subpoena power, what good is this committee if it doesn't have subpoena power? If you can't make these people, because here's the thing, they were voluntarily doing the wrong thing. So how are they going to voluntarily do the right thing? That's what that's my question I have for any lawmaker, because there was only 2 of them that didn't agree to this. And I want to give a shout out, and I'm going to go get their names, but there was 2 representatives, Drew Roach and Tom Dipple, that voted no. They stuck to their guns, not with their caucus. They stuck to their guns in the Constitution, because I will tell you right now that there was a lot of things in this power sharing agreement that is not a win. It might be a win for Republicans and Lisa DeMuth, but it's not a win for the people. It's not a win for grassroots. It's not a win for neighborhoods, communities, because it doesn't reflect us. They did what was good for their party. They didn't do what was good for the people. And that's what I really want to get into. And we can debate this. I will debate anybody. Walter Hudson, Pam Altendorf, Dwayne Quam, any of y'all. Here's the thing. I want to know why you voted yes to a fraud, because here's the crazy thing of it is, I went up to the state capitol and explained this whole oversight, and it's not, and I said it's not going to work correctly if you don't have subpoena power. If you don't make people do the right thing, they're not going to want to do it. And I hate to say it. I really hate to say it. So when you see Pastor McAfee, Reverend McAfee, Shiloh Temple, Pastor Heron, ask them nicely, would they voluntarily give up their records? Because they're going to say, no, you have no subpoena power. Even if you, that the threatening of subpoena power was more powerful than anything. And you don't see anybody. This is one crazy part for me is you don't see no black leaders. They're trying to deflect and distract you from what's happening in the state capitol. They're throwing out the violence interruption programs, but people really need to understand that elections have consequences.
News this morning, Minnesota House leaders from both parties sharing new details about a power sharing agreement struck last night. And our Caroline Cummings is at the State House right now. She joins us live here. And Caroline, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks. You're getting a glimpse into my lovely office in the Capitol basement. It's really great to have a workspace here.
Okay, that's actually something I didn't know, that every news station does have a workspace in the Capitol.
Yeah. when you spend enough time here, like me, it's a worthwhile investment. That's for sure.
No kidding. I mean, you were at both news conferences from Republicans and Democrats this morning. So, yeah, busy day at the Capitol. Kind of help us understand what this power sharing agreement looks like.
Okay, so really quick, we got to maybe take 3 steps backwards to understand why we're here in the first place, which is there was a seat vacant at the beginning of session because a judge ruled that the DFL winner of this Roseville seat didn't live in the district, and he said he wouldn't take the oath of office. So that gave Republicans a temporary 1-seat advantage, 67 to 66, when the chamber after the election was tied 67 to 67. So Republicans said that they intended to take that power. They had that majority, even if it would be temporary until a special election. And so Democrats said, in order to keep you from doing that, we want to boycott the session. And that's what they've been doing for more than 3.5 weeks now. The entirety of the session, they have not showed up to deny quorum or the minimum number of people required in the chamber to do anything. So that's basically paralyzed the chamber, right? They haven't been able to do anything without 68 members present, which they did not, the Republicans did not have without Democrats there. So that's how the context for this all. So they were working behind the scenes for a while to try to come to some sort of agreement. Democrats maintain that they wanted some terms that would chart the course if the House returns to a tie, what the power sharing agreement would look like. They had been working on a power sharing agreement before this vacancy in the Roseville seat. So they finally came to a deal last night. And what it looks like is Republican leader Gamuth will be the Speaker of the House. She'll be the first Black woman to have that job. She will have that role for 2 years, even if the House returns to a tie. They had previously looked at co-speakership type of an arrangement. She will have that power, and it's a very powerful position for 2 years. Republicans will control committees until that special election. If they return to a tie, then Republicans and Democrats will share the committees. And for those who are watching, committees is where the sausage is made. It's where the bills are moved through. They have hearings, public hearings on the bills. So that's another part of it. Another win for Republicans was they wanted this fraud and oversight committee, which they will control and have the gavel for 2 years. That will look into any sort of investigation of fraud in state agencies and have some oversight of how that works. In exchange, what Democrats also wanted in this process was they wanted assurances that Brad Tabke, the winner in Shakopee, of course, you've been reporting on your show, right, Maria, who won by 14 votes. There were missing ballots at the center of the case. And a judge had determined in an election contest that he was still the valid winner despite those missing ballots. Remember, some of those voters linked to the ballots testified that they were, who they voted for. So in this agreement, Brad Tabke will be seated. The Minnesota House of Representatives has the power to have the final say over its members. And Democrats wanted assurances that Brad Tabke would not be unseated by the Republicans. So that's something that they got in this arrangement too. So all of that is to say each side is claiming a win here. They each get something they want. And the bottom line is they'll all come back at 3:30 this afternoon to actually really start session in earnest this year.
This is where your story starts. It's where you are encouraged to bring your big ideas, where you find opportunity.
I'm gonna be honest. There's a lot of people that are not satisfied. It's a lot of people that feel like it's a no-win. You feel like our representatives came out because they seated Brad Tabke, so that was a win for them. And also, they got the no subpoena power in the Oversight Committee and the fraud and prevention. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, how was this a win for the people and not for each political party? Is that Lisa DeMuth can be a speaker for 2 years, and then Brad Tabke can be seated, and then there's no subpoena power. So honestly, you're not making these people be honest. You're not making them. You're not making people be responsible. It's like this whole slap on the wrist. And this is my crazy thing for me is I want to think about this, and I want people to think about this, is why are we now comfortable with no accountability, no responsibility, right? When it comes to especially our juveniles, because I will tell you like this. I was a juvenile that was in JDC. I was a juvenile that a lot of people did not feel bad about. They called me scum. They treated me like scum. And now we treat these kids that It's their front lobos. They can't think right. They can't do this. They can't. Well, stop saying that it's not their responsibility because they just want to do whatever when they're young. When this is what we're allowing. So it shows me that you really don't care about merits. You don't care about people's thinking. They should just be who they want to be. And same thing when it comes to gender affirming care. You don't care that it mentally hurts the kids, that the therapy and I'm not saying that every story is the same because every story is different. Even when it comes to people that have gone through the process of, they were a boy and then went back to a girl. There's a lot of stories out there and they're all not the same. And there's a lot of things that I don't agree with when it comes to like the therapy, because here's my thing of it is you can never go through therapy and try to be something. This is my thing of it is I want to tell people to put yourself in their shoes. Put yourself in their shoes. And in a lot of cases I have, because I see that I'm not going to say, I say I have because I've been in therapy and I see the inner fighting between is it right and is it wrong. I don't care what anybody says, because here's the thing of it is, even when it comes to Leah Finke, even when it comes to Bruce Jenner, Leah Thomas, how come when you're asked certain questions, you never answer? When you're asked certain questions, you never answer. So how is that healthy? And this goes for anybody who's in big pharma, who's in pharmacies, pharmaceuticals. How come when certain questions are asked, nobody ever answers them? Even when it came to, even with we all know that they banned certain food additives, like red dyes, but they didn't ban them right now. They banned them in the future. So how does that help us now if people can sit here and still be able to kill themselves, and we still have cancer cells, we still have ADHD, we still have all this ADD, and yet you're allowing the things that we're told hurt kids. But because they bring in a profit, you're okay with extending it out. That's crazy as hell to me. Like I really truly don't understand that. And I'm asking you people, you residents, constituents, is how does this affect you? How does this? You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's really crazy to me, because how do you get a committee with no power? You're basically it's smoke and mirrors, because you have to read the papers. That's the one crazy thing is that when all this power sharing came out, was there any talks that, who cares about, you can control the fraud oversight committee. But if you can't make people testify, what kind of accountability are we getting? Because they're not going to do it voluntarily. That's what I don't understand. These people be expecting the good out of people. Have they not seen what's going on since George Floyd died? Had they not seen all the frauds and scams in our communities, no matter if it came to PPP loans, no matter if it came to unemployment, no matter if it came to Medicaid, no matter if it came to daycares, recovery, peer recovery specialists, violence interrupters, daycares, feeding our future? Everything has been a scam, all in the names of Black Lives Matter. Let's be honest. That's the one crazy thing. I made a post about, everybody's talking about the USAID. They gave Black Lives Matter money, BLM. For what? If that's going to foreign entities, what are you giving it to people that, I don't know. We need this shit shut down, and for however long, so we can clean this shit up. Because I will tell you like this, there's more fraud. If they got rid of all the fraud in America, we wouldn't be as in debt as we are, in deficits. You wouldn't see public education. The education schools are going up to the state capitol asking for more money because of the simple fact that Democrats passed. They weren't thinking about the people. They were thinking about their political party. They were thinking about their agenda. They weren't thinking about the people's agenda. And people need to wake up. that's the one crazy part, is because I seen somebody made a post, and there's something, there's a I have to go through the bills, but I know it was dropped yesterday. That they want to get rid of Democratic Socialists of America. Well, they threw an Action for Liberty. And it's like, how? I don't understand that. Like, just because they disagree with you, because we can do things better, you want to destroy them, you want to demonize them. But then I understand how America is. That's how we operate. We like to demonize people. But I want to get into what's also is the violence interrupters. If you don't know what's going on in Minneapolis, you need to hear this. So this is a report by Deanna Winter of the Star Tribune, and they're talking about the violence interrupters going from the city of Minneapolis to Hennepin County. And because they can't, I want you to listen to this, because it gets really tricky. So, and you've heard this before, is when it didn't matter if it came from Walmsley, it didn't matter if it came from wards 4 or 5, Vital and Ellison. They were told a certain thing, and it's never been like that. So here we go.
Some Minneapolis City Council members want Hennepin County to temporarily take over 2 once-lauded violence prevention programs that they say have been plagued by problems. Several members of the council's progressive wing want to send $1.13 million to Hennepin County to administer the group violence intervention and youth group violence intervention programs. Council members have raised concerns about mismanagement of the city's Neighborhood Safety Department, which oversees the programs. In recent years, the city has increasingly relied on people with criminal records to help reduce crime and diffuse tension as an alternative to sworn officers. But the program has been plagued by problems. Last year, some of the groups said the city stopped paying them, and they stopped getting client referrals from law enforcement and probation agencies. The city was also sued for allegedly arbitrarily handing out millions of dollars in violence prevention contracts. The former director of the Neighborhood Safety Department, which oversees violence interrupters and the group violence intervention, GVI, program, last year blamed understaffing and a lack of resources. Luana Nelson Brown recently resigned amid scrutiny by council members who questioned why violence interrupters weren't being sent to crime hotspots and why the group violence program had scaled back some work since 2023. The city employee who was in charge of managing GVI contracts also recently departed the city. Nelson Brown last year said just 2 employees were handling over 100 contracts. The department had over $18 million in contracts in 2023. The city council has funded programming and staff to beef up the department and brought national experts to support it, but has been frustrated by the lack of answers about outcomes and data. Council members Jason Chavez and Robin Wansley and Council President Elliot Payne said in a news release Thursday that they will propose moving the programs to the county because residents aren't getting adequate service. The Council Budget Committee will take up the proposal on Monday. Community Safety Commissioner Todd Barnett, Nelson Brown's former superior, is serving as interim director of neighborhood safety. He released a statement calling the proposal disappointing as much as it is mischaracterizing a problem that doesn't exist. A recent study of the programs by the NYU Policing Project said Minneapolis needs to better manage the programs, saying there is too much informality in the management of city programs and contracted services. The report said the city has no centralized contract management system, no process for sharing basic activity or performance data, and no procedure to confirm that violence interrupters were deployed and assess the outcome. It was apparent that the city lacked essential information about the activities and performance of several of its contract providers, the report said. We were unable to review any outputs of the interventions or what approach they are currently following. Basic information, such as community contacts, interventions used, outcomes, and related data were not available for review or, based on our inquiry, being shared with the city. Unlike other cities, Minneapolis has no policy for how city officials activate violence interrupters, but instead, the groups relied on an informal network to direct them to areas at risk of violence. Other cities activate the groups through schools, hospitals, and police. The report said the violence interruption programs don't provide coverage during the times of day with the highest historical gun violence. There are no violence interruption groups working in neighborhoods west and southwest of downtown nor after midnight. When 1/4 of shootings happen and North Minneapolis had no coverage on Sundays, the day with the second highest level of gun violence in the city. Barnett countered that the Neighborhood Safety Department has worked to improve transparency, accountability, and efficiency. We are making great progress, working closely with U.S. Attorney's Office, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, and dozens of community partners, and even a temporary move will undoubtedly cause disruptions. We are all aware of the promise of this program and see it as a cornerstone of the Neighborhood Safety Department and the city's community safety ecosystem. Hennepin County spokeswoman Carolyn Maureen and said the county is always open to collaboration and coordination with the city of Minneapolis. Chris Megan of the Minnesota Star Tribune.
Wow. So it's like we're okay with fraud. We're okay with programs not helping the people, not what they're really there for. So I want to take it to another one, right? Because they spoke about this 4 years ago. They spoke about not also about Minneapolis and the city council, but some of these foundations, because it linked back to city halls. So I want to get into it. They were talking about the Minneapolis Foundation. And here you go.
Say they're not happy with how Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey plans to address police accountability in the city. Marielle Mose was at a press conference this morning where the group spoke out about their concerns. And Marielle, what did they say?
Well, Allie, the group just finished wrapping up their press conference moments ago, and it was several leaders of civil rights activist groups here in the Twin Cities, and they argued that they don't want Mayor Frey to pass on police accountability and reform decisions to the Minneapolis Foundation, which is headed by former Mayor Archie Ryback. Instead, they want to see a civil advisory council, a civilian board advisory council made up of community members, so that the community members now have the power and decisions when it comes to police reform, and they emphasize that they want these community members to be people of color. They've argued that the Minneapolis Foundation doesn't have the expertise on police brutality and reform, and they cited Ryback's 12-year tenure as mayor, saying he did not hold enough police officers accountable at the time.
Many of those officers who killed people under R.T. Ryback's watch are still on the force to this day.
We are saying to R.T. Ryback and his
everybody pay. There go Noah. I don't know where he's been at.
And we will not allow your failure to continue, because you're not an expert. Neither you're actually the exact reason why we are in this situation.
These are all paid leaders. Crazy. No wonder why we never get no change.
Office, as well as former Mayor I.T. Ryback with the Minneapolis.
Because here's the thing: if it's not directed at them, they get frustrated. Oh, we should do this. We should do that. Well, what do you mean? I mean, we have all these programs and nothing ever changes. Nothing ever changes. Nothing. So again, I ask, what? So this is when they introduced this strategy to help curb the violence, right? And I want to get into that because this is important. So I want you to watch and listen.
Well, Randy, the Minneapolis City Council sent about $1 million, or cut about $1 million from the police department budget and sent some of it to the Office of Violence Prevention, which is overseeing a new strategy that is trying to look at gun violence like a public health crisis. And this, of course, comes as the city is dealing with 49 homicides reported so far this year, surpassing 2019's total. And tonight, the public got a chance to learn a little bit more about this new program. Gun violence is more than just numbers for those who've experienced it.
The bullet went through my jaw and it stuck in my neck.
Latrina Jackson was shot at PV Park on July 16th and just got out of the hospital this week.
How can we stop this? Because it's hurting the whole community. And we're scared to walk down the streets.
As she recovers, Jackson is wearing orange in solidarity with outreach workers newly branded as Minneapolis Us.
And that's really about the core message that it takes all of us to prevent violence. And so
Sasha Cotton directs the Minneapolis Office of Violence Prevention, a city department created 2 years ago to supplement policing with community-based approaches. The office is trying a new national cure violence model, which treats gun violence like a doctor would a disease. Outreach teams will target target at-risk kids and intervene in disputes to prevent violence before it happens.
Some of them are coaches, teachers. Some of them have their own past experiences with gang and gun violence. And so we're really digging deep and trying to find people that we think can meet the variety of needs that we know that people at risk have.
First time with the ceasefire in 1999. To introduce the concept, the city is offering showings of the documentary The Interrupters this month, which depicts outreach workers using the same model in Chicago. It's all about relationships and helping steer people toward jobs, education, and housing instead of violence.
And if we can save just one life, get one young person inspired to do something.
Why not everybody?
And the trickle
Why
down
just
could have
one? I don't get that
amazing
shit.
impact.
Because the human toll of gun violence can have lasting effects.
The gun violence has to stop. It has to stop.
No, and it does. It definitely, that might be Gemini back there. I don't know. It might be. That'd be crazy. Not really, but I knew he was around during that time and he did a lot of things. But so the next thing that I want to get into is about these planes, and I'm going to talk a little bit at the end about the violence interrupters and all these scams and this fraud, because it does, right? But I want to talk about what happened last night, because a plane went missing with 10 passengers, and it went off when nobody knew where it went. So I want to talk about how they're still searching in open waters for this flight that went missing in Alaska.
This morning, a search is underway for a small plane with 10 people on board. It vanished mid-flight near Alaska. And we're going to show you a map with the radar data of the plane's flight path across Alaska's Norton Sound yesterday afternoon. And then you can see the moment it stops transmitting over the water. Joining us right now, CNN aviation analyst Miles O'Brien, and a massive search is underway right now. What we know here, Miles, is this is a Cessna plane operated by Bering Air. And Alaskan State Police, they were notified at about 4 p.m. yesterday of an overdue aircraft that had gone missing with these 10 people on board. What are your questions as they continue with this search now?
Well, checking through the box, it's a very safe aircraft generally, the Cessna 206, the Caravan, 10 passengers and pilot, single engine turbine. It's a workhorse for the backcountry. So that it has a really good safety record. The airline itself been going since about 1979, never had an accident. So you have a safe airline and a safe aircraft. Horrible weather conditions. It is Alaska in the winter after all. We're told that the aircraft arrived near Nome and was told to wait while they cleared the runway because of this bad weather. Now you can see those pictures there. That kind of gives you an idea of what we're talking about. Of course, it's dark at this time of year at that time. And in the course of this holding pattern, waiting for them to clear off the runway, vanished. Now, one of the top things you have to look at in a scenario like that, Kate, is the possibility of icing. If that bad weather coated the wings with ice, the aerodynamic surfaces, the air intake for the engine, the performance of the aircraft would degrade and it could stall and crash. The one thing about the search to consider here is Norton Sound there has a fairly significant amount of ice cover. That aircraft with fuel and passengers probably weighs about 8,000 pounds, but there are places where the ice is actually thick enough to support the craft. So that should give searchers some bit of hope.
That is very interesting, Miles. So that search, is it riskier? I mean, you called this plane a workhorse. Is it any riskier flying in that area than anywhere else in the United States? I mean, yes, it is Alaska, and you know that they have more brutal winters than anywhere else.
Yeah, Alaska has disproportionately much higher accident rate. It's a combination of weather. We were just talking about tough terrain, lots of small aircraft, lots of landings on dirt and gravel, landings off runway types of situations. And, as a per capita, there is a lot of small airplane usage up there because of the lack of roads. It's the way to get around. And as a result, the accident rate there is very high.
I want to ask you about the latest we heard about the investigation into the deadly midair collision in Washington. President Trump was on the Hill yesterday, and in speaking at the National Prayer Breakfast, he blamed the crash on what he's called the obsolete computer system used by air traffic control. The way he put it is that the United States has spent billions of dollars to renovate an old system instead of investing in a new one. Let me play this for you.
We should have had the proper control. We should have had better equipment. We don't. We have obsolete equipment. They were understaffed for whatever reason. I guess the helicopter was high, and we'll find out exactly what happens. We're all going to sit down and do a great computerized system for our control towers, brand new, not pieced together, obsolete like it is land-based, trying to hook up a land-based system.
What do you think of that?
Well, he has a point there about the system, but I would caution everyone not to pin blame this early. The accident investigation is still underway. There are a lot of factors that go into these crashes, and whether the computer system which runs the FAA control system, the radar system, the satellite system, all kind of patched together, whether that has anything to do with this remains to be seen. But it is true that the FAA has had difficulty modernizing its system, and that difficulty stems from the fact that Congress has not appropriated the money to really do a wholesale change from a ground-based radar system, which goes back to the 50s, to something built on satellites, which is where the future is, of course, Kate.
Oh, so you could hear the beginnings of that being a new push from the president right there, from that soundbite from him. It's good to see you, Miles. Thank you so much for getting up.
If you've been waiting to apply for disability.
It's not the only plane that's crashed in the last couple of days, and it's wild to me of that people still to this day, we think flying is okay. We think flying is crazy, but I will tell you this is that I woke up and I've seen reports of crashes in Alaska, the Philippines, and Brazil. One of the latest incidents involves, like I just showed you, is the Boeing air flight carrying 10 people that suddenly vanished from radar near Nome, Alaska. No distress signal, no warning, just gone. And this isn't some isolated event. Over the past few months, we've seen an uptick in plane crashes, and the mainstream media doesn't seem too eager to dig into what's really happening. Could this be an issue with aging aircrafts? Are we seeing the results of maintenance being neglected? Or is there something bigger at play? We don't deal in conspiracy theories, but we do deal in facts. And right now, the facts point to something that's not normal. Why aren't officials addressing this? Why aren't we getting straight answers? We're going to keep following the story because something isn't adding up. And we're not just going to sit back and accept the official narratives they feed us. So, and that's serious. We need to look at this because I will tell you like this. I seen a story that happened in St. Paul with a child. And it blew my mind that a 3-year-old was when another parent's I shouldn't even say parents, an adult's responsibility. And they did wrong. Oh, wow. After allegedly consuming it at a daycare ran by a local elected official. I didn't know that shit. Wow. That's wild. But I want to get into this story of a child who tested positive for meth in the Twin Cities at a daycare.
She says her preschool-age son tested positive for meth after coming home from daycare. That daycare, run by a local elected official, is now suspended. Joe McCoy joins us with what the boy's mother is telling us tonight.
I got a call around 12:15 that he had thrown up and that I needed to come and pick him up.
That call on December 6th from an at-home daycare Victoria Kane took her 3-year-old son to turned out to be the start of a parent's nightmare.
He talked the whole ride home, which is out of character for him.
Victoria noticed her son would not stop talking
and fidgeting. That's crazy.
Children's Hospital in Minneapolis.
And about an hour later, we got the results back that came back conclusively as methamphetamine.
According to a toxicology report, her son had ingested illegal meth, allegedly at a home daycare run by a local elected official that Victoria had
I hate that. I'm going to see if I can find out the name.
Our son had mentioned in his state of being very high, eating onion crumbs in the bathroom at daycare. And we didn't quite know what he was talking about.
After a night in the hospital, Victoria says she and her husband began piecing together the story. She asked her husband to look up what meth looked like.
And you can see, you can read our text message exchange. That's what we found.
She also had her son, who cooked with her often, try to recreate the incident using a piece of onion that resembled what he ate off the bathroom floor.
It's this small. Oh, is that small?
Wow.
And where was it? In the bed.
Damn. That's cold. These people have covered this shit up. That's wild.
You hadn't experienced any issues with them prior to this?
No, I trusted her like she was a mom to me. I asked her for advice all the time.
The Minnesota Department of Human Services ordered an immediate temporary suspension of the daycare on December 10th, citing an imminent risk of harm to the people served. We reached out to the elected official who runs the daycare, but have not heard back.
I am happy to report that Victoria does not believe there will be any long-term effects to her son. She has found a new daycare for her 2 kids that she says is amazing. However,
That's great.
she says she is still working through fully trusting someone again to take care of them.
That's wild as hell that we sit here in this country. It's probably the same story. I want to see this.
Family wants answers tonight. They say their little boy tested positive for methamphetamine after coming home from daycare.
Alec Jokic has been digging
I'm going to find out
into this story
what
today.
elected official this
Joins
is.
us with the
'Cause that's
latest.
meth.
Alex, almost hard to believe.
That's wild as
It
fuck.
is, Kevin and Lindsay. The family is absolutely horrified. The daycare's license is temporarily suspended, and there are ongoing investigations into exactly what happened and who may be to blame.
How is this even possible?
Victoria Kane is still in disbelief
The 3-year-old should not ingest meth.
by what happened to her son back in December.
And when it's
She says
February.
his home-based daycare in South St. Paul
There's
called to
I don't
let
know
her
whose
know
house that
he
is.
had thrown up. And when she brought him home,
He wouldn't sit still. He wouldn't stop talking. He was pacing our couch, keeping his hands in his, moving his hands a lot, putting them in his pocket.
worried about the bizarre behavior, she brought him to Children's, where a drug test revealed high levels of amphetamines and methamphetamines.
They told us he wouldn't sleep for 48 hours.
Wow.
We were up all night in the hospital. There was nothing they could do other than sit and watch him tweak out.
She says she later got a strange story from her son that he ate onion crumbs at daycare.
I thought, onion crumbs, what does meth look like?
So she pulled out her phone.
Where were the onions? In the bathroom.
And tried to have him recreate what he saw.
That's wild.
2 small pieces.
It was still alarming
That's
to be like, these
wild.
were pretty big. Of course you saw them and ate them. Like, you didn't know what they were.
We found the daycare's license is currently suspended. DHS saying there is an imminent risk of harm. South St. Paul PD told us the case is now with Lakeville PD due to a possible conflict of interest. We learned the daycare is licensed to an elected official.
Damn.
Meanwhile, this mom,
I want people to know that this
so she's
happened
local.
in our
I'm gonna look at the city
community.
council.
says she's in limbo, waiting for someone to be held accountable. Now, we did reach out to Lakeville PD today. They would not confirm anything about the case to us. We should mention the little boy is doing okay.
That's crazy as hell. I will say that's crazy as hell that we do the things that we do. We call people snitches, but we allow kids that don't know any better because, like he said, he thought it was an onion crumb. And yet he ate it and he got high. Where's the accountability? And it's 2 months later, we're just hearing something. That's crazy. Where's the train? And this is an elected official that didn't resign, that didn't, nothing. Nobody, like, that's crazy. Where's the accountability? That we allow things like this and people look the other way. We allow this and look the other way. We allow this and look the other way. Because it doesn't happen to our kids. It doesn't happen to our family. But what if that was your son? What if that was your nephew that went to daycare? You put in somebody else's hands for responsibility and they do this. Are you not going to want accountability? Are you not going to want somebody to pay for this, to give answers? Because I will tell you right now that nobody's going to do it voluntarily. Nobody. That's the one crazy part. And I will never understand this. It's the same way I said that came to this fraud and oversight committee. I explained to Walter and Pam, because I even got the idea from Congress with subpoena power. And I wanted to, this is the one crazy thing, because I bet you a lot of the Democrats, they're like, where the fuck did this nigga get that at? You know what I'm saying? Because I watched the hearing, right? And I watched multiple hearings about, guns and different things when it came to, state. I shouldn't say state, but to the federal, government. And I seen that they had subpoena power. And I'm like, wait, if they have subpoena power, I can't imagine. This crazy as hell that nobody really is talking about, what's going on inside of our community, because a lot of people think because they get paid to look the other way that it's right. They get paid to look the other way, so they believe that it's right. Is it? No. I'm going to show you something, because and I'm just trying to make change. I don't care about no. I just want to make sure that everybody is okay. I don't, you know what I'm saying? I want to make sure that everybody is seen a certain way, that we're all equal. And I sent this to the lady that runs the I shouldn't say that she runs it, but she's a Republican. Because I said that at the Minnesota Fraud Committee only works with subpoena power. Without it, the committee is no good, because it's all about voluntary action otherwise, right? And I asked Pam, I said, did I not meet with you and Walter at the Capitol about a committee for a fraud investigation? And she says, yes, and that's being implemented. It's not being implemented the way that it was described, right? So, and I did thank her. I said, thank you. Now can grassroots individuals who have suffered because of these failed democratic policies please allow us a vote? We feel disenfranchised and not listened to. I don't mean any disrespect with you, Pam, at all. I am attempting to get answers and change. And yes, I am. But I'm not going to put on the nice gloves anymore. I'm not going to sit here and walk on slivered glass all the time, thinking that it's going to get better. No, it's only getting worse. And if you guys don't have the balls, the kahunas to stand up for the people, because I don't care that you're going to door knock for Paul Wilstrom today, Walter. I don't care about that. What are you going to do for the people? Because in my eyes, you guys caved. You think it's a win for the Republican Party that we got a speaker who is a black woman, Lisa DeMuth. And yes, I will say that is a big accomplishment. But how do we get a fraud committee with no oversight, that you guys only can make people do something voluntarily? They don't have to. That's what I will never understand. And they promote it. I've seen Andy Smith came on KTTC, said it was a win for Democrats, him and Kim Hicks. Like, come on. How much do we got to take these slaps in the face? That's what I don't understand. It's like, why do we got to keep on getting slapped in the face for them? Because they don't give a fuck about us. They care more about their Republican Party than they care about we the people. And I'm going to give it a couple more days, but I've asked some questions, because there was a case out of Red Wing, MCF Red Wing, where a juvenile died. A kid died in their hands. And they're not saying anything about it. When you ask questions, they look the other way. So I'm hoping that there is some legislators, some representatives that do the right thing, because we're seeing that politics doesn't mean you're going to do the right thing. Your word doesn't mean that you're going to do the right thing. So we got to stand up. We got to stand up, because who's going to do right? We see that when it comes down to political parties, they don't want to do the right thing. They only care about their political affiliation. They only care about their political parties. And that's wild as hell to me. Well, why people don't stand up and try to make a difference? Is it where individuals are scared? You're scared of losing your job, your livelihood. Well, what about the community? You can't say you work for the community and you out here acting like a 304, a hoe, a bitch. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I don't understand. And that's what, if you listen to that article that I played from Deanna Winter, some of the most crucial times that we needed violence interrupters, and they were nowhere near the case. They were nowhere near preventing violence, but yet we were paying them at an all-time high. We were paying them $50 an hour to watch protesters yell at buildings, because I was one of them in Brooklyn Center. Literally, these people were paid almost $50 to $60 an hour to sit here and watch me in a bullhorn. Because I was never going to do no violence. Even when, this is the crazy thing, because my PO messaged me, right? I got to do one more thing to get off probation. And now I'm thinking, like, do I want to get off early, or do I just want to let this shit sit? Because honestly, I don't need anger management. I was in my right mind when I did all that with the Brooklyn Center Police Department. I knew that's the one crazy thing, because I feel like if I go to anger management, then I spit at that officer. And I know I didn't spit at that officer. I took a deal because probation was way better than going to prison. Way better than going to prison. And I don't care how people look at me. I'm really considering that I'm going to do my jail time, because then they got to take care of me. And I got health issues. You know what I'm saying? Like, they got to take care of me. So I'm going to see. Because you get all that. You get 3 hots and a cot. You get maybe not the best medical, but you got to make them. And if you go to the right county, you're going to make them. You know what I'm saying? Because they know that they don't like lawsuits. They know that they don't like being in the media. They don't like national news. They don't like headlines. So you have to make them. That's why the whole reason of, you see this child that's in the news now. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody. Do you see any representative coming out? Damn, that's sad. Well, who the fuck is that elected official? What political party was they in? Because we're seeing that Republicans are Democrats really don't care. They don't care about where you live. As long as you're breaking the law and you can't get caught for it. And if you do get caught for it, they're going to deny everything. They're going to deny that they took pictures with you. They're going to deny that they knocked down doors for you, even though you didn't live in that district. And they claim that that area is so progressive, so liberal, so democratic. Why'd you have to cheat to win? If it's so leaning that way, why did you have to cheat to win? Because that's all it's showing me, is that when it comes to this fraud and oversight committee, is that you will do anything to not be accountable. And I think, honestly, that's why a lot of Republicans in that caucus, they went for that, because they understood that some of this shit was going to come back to them. I'll be serious, because I would tell you like this: there was Feeding Our Future sites in Republican areas, and you can't tell me that there was no Republican legislator that wasn't getting kickbacks to look the other way. I'm going to be 100% honest. Let's look at these 990 forms. Look at the donations. There was a lot of money that was between envelopes slipped under the, you know what I'm saying? So that's how I understand that. That's why they didn't want subpoena power. That's why they're throwing fits the way that they are, because they don't want subpoena power. They don't want the people holding the power, because they want to leave it voluntarily for you to do the right thing. But we're, in my eyes and in America's eyes, you have to force people to do the right thing. You have to make them do the right thing, because a lot of people will do the right thing if they know they're going to get less jail time. They're not going to get any jail time. They're not going to get, any accountability. That's why we have immunity. That's why we have the things that we have set up. But it takes somebody to do the right thing. Even though you've done wrong, you can erase them wrongs by finally facing up and looking in the mirror and be like, you know what? I did wrong. I got into this to change my community. I was tired of the bloodshed. I was tired of the violence, but yet I took the money. Jeremiah Ellison. I took the money to look in a different direction. A different direction. A different direction. But it wasn't the community. It was not the community. And I'm going to be on tomorrow night with Robert, and we're going to talk about these things that are going on in Minneapolis and Minnesota. And a lot of it was already here before. They took the baton. They passed on our ancestors, and some are still alive. And they understand that right now is the right time. That's why you're seeing Trump do the things that he's doing. I don't agree. Here's the one thing of it is, man, and I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not no mega ass nigga. I'm not a nigga for Trump. I ain't blacks for Trump. I ain't none of that. I didn't like that nigga. I understood that what he wanted, he was bad for people. The same thing when it came to Kamala. That's why my vote went to Andy Williams and Rita. I can't remember her last name now, but I think her name was Williams too. They weren't married or nothing like that. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's why. Because I understood that, you know, my vote for Andy, people are going to look at me like, oh, that was just a wasted vote. In your eyes, yes, not in mine. Because I understood that there was a nigga up here that a lot of people didn't understand what he was doing, but would still 10 toes down for us. So with that being said, man, I hope everybody has a great, 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 great weekend. And I want to get into some Black History Month music. And here's What's Changed by Loved Parker, Lee Moore, and Chaz Neal. Y'all all know me as the urban conservative. But this was before I changed my name and, you know, started going by the urban conservative. But this is something that we came up with. This, I don't even actually, I never had played this before. So I think I know I've listened, but I haven't played it on YouTube. So with that being said, win or fail, freedom or jail, heaven or hell, wish me well, and y'all have a great one. Here is What's Changed, Lee Moore, Love Parked Her, Circumstantial Saint, and Chaz Neal. I'll see y'all Monday.
What has changed in 2022? Police kill more black people than any other year.
It's time to bring Black Wall Street back.
But with the war on drugs,
culture, corporate interest, the amount of volume
in their bank accounts of some of these activists,
color being hunted. That freedom ring is
Tyree Nichols' death to young black men, and literally nothing has changed. Police departments are fully funded. Anybody, that's easy. We do that 365 days a year. And on the leap year, we do it 366.
I don't think this is what King had envisioned in his dream. There's so many uncut gems that need to be freed, thinking they unpolished when really they hold the most beauty. Laying silent, walked on as they awoke into a world still divided, thinking it's divisible when it should be united. Not seeing that pigment is just part of the evolution, like a chameleon forced to adapt to your surroundings. So why is color being hunted?
only thing that changed were the chains.
A riot is language of the unheard. It is a language of the poverty. It is an outward expression of aggression and microaggressions and pain that has been festering, and people have had enough. Don't you dare speak for other people when you don't know other people's experiences and you haven't lived it, because you won't step outside of your fucking development and your little bubble that you live in. You want to talk all the shit you want, have the opinion that you want, but step a foot in my shoes and understand what I've been.
6 times 5 plus 9.
When you see the kind of things that people actually do destroy, they destroy corporate places. They destroy things that they're upset at and angry at. They destroy corporate America. And the things that they do loot are necessities and basic items that they need, like toilet paper and lawn. People have had enough. Don't you dare.
With the war on drugs, with the war on drugs,
with the war on drugs,
corporate
interest. It's time to bring Black Wall Street.
We're all disenfranchised. No one is encouraged to actually step up, stand up, and think for themselves.
Dream.
Culture.
streets.
So you think your hands are clean? Well, baby, that is not reality. It's tie-dye. The blood was stained into your clothes before you put them on. Sharecropping, trafficking, debt peonage, convict leasing, black crows, eugenics, Tuskegee. Can we talk about Jim Crow? Each new incarnation of slavery had to match the new level of consumption of the white mentality. Each new level added of capitalism, of white patriarchal, colonizing corporate consuming layer has enslavement built in, whether you know it or not. To go forward, we must go back, at least for context. At least for understanding. There are millions of black laws that we need to properly grieve. I need space to breathe. We don't want revenge. We want respect, compassion, empathy, reparations. Racial wealth gap. Whites on average have 8 times the wealth of that as a result of compounded investments and incentives to keep you thinking you did nothing wrong. And your hands are clean. But it was your grandparents and your great-grands that lynched my people for sport and took souvenirs, fingers, and ears. It was your people that laughed with glee at the sight of my ancestors burning. I feel like many of us suffer from PTSD, seething with pent-up. Let's talk about black migration from white KKK terror and torment, yet the blacks were deemed the criminals. And the blacks are deemed the criminals. And the blacks are deemed the criminals. The backs of the blacks are deemed the pillars, yet we are the first expendables. Can we talk?
With the war on drugs,
only thing that changed were the change. 6 times 5 plus 9. It's time to bring Black Wall Street back.
and unity.
At Freedom Ring, 39 years since segregation, 346 years since slavery, and we are still enslaved to a new manipulation. Coming from material things, enslaved to Cuban links, gold chains, and diamond rings. We don't need their dirt.